Badlands, what are the Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Daily Herold here on Badlands Media. I am your host, John Herold, and happy St. Patrick's Day, by the way. I am wearing green, as I disclosed in the Rumble chat. I actually do have a shamrock tattoo. I have a bunch of random tattoos. Those who have been to previous, I guess it was Threadfest way back in the day, actually showed I do have lips on my butt. I've showed that. You can ask. I'm not shy about showing it to people. So, yeah, but I do have shamrock tattoos, so I'm good for life in that department. I used to actually claim that I was Irish, so not to offend the already offended Irishmen in our chat as well. But plenty to catch up on today. Should be a fun show. Some interesting narratives flowing around. We'll get right to it after we get a quick word from our sponsors. First up, we got Rise Attire.
By now, you've probably seen the new collab between Rise and Badlands Media, but I'll tell you what you haven't seen yet. The end of Clown World as we know it. But have no fear. Introducing the latest addition to the Badlands INTL lineup, the sequel to the best-selling Sci War series. We've been conditioned by these clowns to accept their circus. But it's time to unwind that and strike them out the history books. The future belongs to the real, and we've got it in droves. Go to badlandsmedia.tv/rise for the full line of premium and direct-to-garment streetwear. Made to order right here in the good old US of A, the heart of the resistance. The fall of Clown World is upon us, patriots. Let's make it official.
And our second sponsor today is River. River announces Bitcoin interest on cash. Now, dollars in your River account will earn a high-yield interest rate that can be paid in Bitcoin. With the price of groceries, mortgage, and tuition on a steep rise, people are now looking at a retirement age of 80 instead of 60, and it's all because dollars are losing value at a record pace. The challenge is finding a way to hold on to your dollar while still getting ahead. That's where River Bitcoin comes in. River Bitcoin's interest on cash protects your dollars with FDIC insurance while offering you the option to reap the potential gains of Bitcoin. Over the past 2 years, you would have earned 2x the rate of most high-yield savings accounts and 16x the rate of the national average savings account with Bitcoin interest on cash. Get started at badlandsmedia.tv/river. Move your cash to River today and start earning a real interest rate with Bitcoin. That's badlandsmedia.tv/river. And yeah, the Bitcoin conference is coming up. I'm pretty excited about that. I think I'm going. I'll be in Vegas in, I think, May. I still got to work some stuff out, but we shall see. But if you didn't get the signal from Trump's executive order on the strategic Bitcoin reserve, I would encourage you to give River a look. I personally think it's well worth it. This is not financial advice. But anyway, let's get right to it. First up, we have new polling. And not that I believe the polling is real anyway. They use it to push whatever narratives they want. At a certain point, though, I think no matter how much they want to spin things, they have to kind of, acknowledge, okay, well, maybe a lot of people like Trump. And this is from Aaron Rupar, no fan of Trump's, and CNBC's poll, or I guess it's a new NBC News poll, but he's at a 47%, which is his personal best. So that's good. People are realizing that, maybe more people like what he's doing than dislike what he's doing. And I would bet his actual approval rating is closer to 75 or 80%. If you actually ask people, I still think it takes a special kind of person in a weird way to fill out these polls. Who does that? I would never do that. But maybe that is normal and I'm the weird one. I don't know. Egg prices are plummeting under Trump, guys. Great news. The USDA says wholesale egg prices dropped for the third straight week to $4.15 per dozen. It's down about $2.70 in just 1 week. I'm going to play this clip. This is a narrative that the left and the mainstream media were trying to use against Trump for a while, and the narrative has been taken away from them.
Finally, there is some good news. These are staples in all of our fridges. A lot of people love eggs. Many of us have them. And finally, I have some good news for you. The USDA says wholesale egg prices dropped for the third straight week, and it's a pretty big drop. The average wholesale price nationwide fell to $4.15 per dozen. So let's put that in perspective. That is down about $2.70 in just 1 week. Prices were over $8 at the end of last month. So part of the reason for the steep drop is people were put off by those high prices, so demand is lower. The other reasons, experts say, are because bird flu outbreaks have decreased. And get this, Easter is really late this year, so demand isn't that high right now. However, USDA also says declines haven't been reflected at store shelves yet, so you still may see those higher prices. But experts say consumers should start to see those prices drop by the time Easter finally rolls around, just in time to dye those Easter eggs.
There you go. So I see people in the chat saying our eggs are still like $8 or whatever, still high. They're going to come down. They just haven't hit the consumers yet. It's going to take a couple weeks, but you'll be able to dye your cheaper Easter eggs on Easter. So that's some good news. We did get an update from Trump on the Epstein files, and I got a couple things to say about this. So let's take a listen to this video here from Chief Nerd.
A lot of intrigue surrounding the release of the Epstein files, Martin Luther King files, John F. Kennedy files. Some current and former FBI agents are saying, some of them telling me, that they feel the FBI establishment came out ahead in the standoff sort of with the New York FBI field office over releasing the records, and your Attorney General Pam Bondi demanding them but not getting all that she wanted. Is that process still on track? I think that's one of the most often questions I've been asked the last couple of days, to release these records on Epstein, MLK, and JFK.
Well, Pam Bondi's done a phenomenal job in every respect. And there could have been some holdback. I haven't heard too much about it, but they could. But the bottom line is the records are getting out. The Kennedy records are getting out. Those are the ones I really wanted to see the most, were the Kennedys. And during my administration, as you know, I released a lot of them. But then a lot of people started coming in, people that I respected, people that worked for the administration, asked me not to release the rest. And I respected that. They gave me certain reasons, but I respected that. And I did say, I must tell you, I said that probably wish I did release the whole thing, because I have no idea what's in there. But since then they found, and we found 2,000 more documents on Kennedy. And the one they want most is Kennedy, and it's going to be released. It's moving along, and it's moving along pretty rapidly. It doesn't go that
weeks
rapidly.
Maybe, or longer?
I say weeks. Yeah, I say weeks.
All right. I think this is interesting for a few reasons, because he's asked about the Epstein files, and I still personally do not think he had anything to do with what Pam Bondi did and the binders and everything. He never was campaigning on releasing the Epstein files. That was Bondi who said that, Kash Patel, a few others. And so he's asked about it, and he follows it up by saying, yeah, Pam Bondi's doing a great job. And so he's showing his support for Pam Bondi. He's not really acknowledging that he had anything to do with the release of the Epstein files. And then he kind of changes the subject a little bit to the JFK files and talked about what he did in his last administration, and that we might see some things in the coming weeks because we found a bunch more documents. And he didn't say why he held some of the documents back last time, but we're going to get them. It's this weird. I think he is in support of Pam Bondi. I mean, obviously she wouldn't be there right now, I don't think, unless he's still playing the optics game, which is totally possible. He's just using these things to still expose people. I don't know if it's necessary at this point, but it is a possible explanation. But let's give Trump the benefit of the doubt, which I mean we could probably do in every situation, and say that he is fully supportive of Pam Bondi. She's doing a great job, all these things, and he just wasn't filled in on her doing the Epstein binder op thing. That is possible, and that doesn't mean she's a bad person. I just think it was a terribly botched rollout, and we might get these JFK files in a few weeks. What does it mean about the Epstein files? I don't think there's a timeline on it. Are there investigations? This is the kind of transparency I want. Like, it's not just, okay, we're going to see these files eventually. And why are we still waiting for the files? What are you guys doing? What is your holdup? Like, be transparent about that. Be transparent from the beginning instead of going on Jesse Waters and announcing, hey, we're going to see some files tomorrow, and then doing the weird binder thing, and then later coming out saying, oh yeah, it's nothing new. And just be like, yeah, they withheld this stuff from the beginning. Tell us that right away. Don't come out with these weird optic stuff at this point. We don't need it. So we'll see what happens. Very curious to get the JFK files. Trump himself said people want those more. I feel like in the community, at least, you know, the people I see on Twitter, they want the Epstein files over JFK. You guys should ask yourselves that. Would you rather, you can only see one. Would you rather see the JFK files or the Epstein files? I'm curious what your answer is. So anyway, we'll keep going here. By the way, I had my kids today till 11:30, which was about a half an hour before the show started. St. Patrick's Day, they didn't have school because of spring break. My show prep, I got enough stories, I think, to get us through the full hour. I'm not worried about that necessarily. Things might be out of order. And honestly, even when I don't have my kids, things are typically kind of out of order. So just might be a little extra out of order today. Let's talk about this. I thought this was an interesting comment from Elon Musk.
So I call it magic money computer, any computer which can just make money out of thin air. That's magic money.
So how does that work?
It just issues payments.
And you said there's something like 11 of these computers at Treasury that are sending out trillions in payments?
They're mostly at Treasury. Some are, but there's some at HHS, some at, there's one or two at State, there's some at DOD. I think we found now 14 magic money computers.
14, okay.
They just send money out of nothing. So
they're talking about the fake magic money printers, guys. I think that's pretty notable. That's very notable. And it's happening at the Treasury. I don't know. I should have done this first. Should have done this story first. The Senate passed. I mean, we talked about Friday, right? The spending bill. It was already rumored at that point that Schumer and some Democrats were going to cave and vote with Trump. And it happened. I'm big sad about it because I want the shutdown. I wanted the shutdown. I like John's disorder, which somebody in the chat, Armageddon, I like John's disorder. I wonder, that's a pretty broad statement. What disorder are you talking about? Are you talking about my disorganization? Or are you talking about like my mental disorder, whatever disorder I have? But anyway, they passed the spending bill, 6 months. So now we have through September for them to negotiate the next one. Bummer. And then Schumer, because of it, canceled his book tour. Can't imagine anybody actually wanting to read his book, let alone go meet him to talk about his book. But he blames it that it's all the backlash he's getting for passing the CR. Kind of find that hard to believe, but whatever. But anyway, the money printers, the Treasury stuff, we're going to get more of that exposed. They're going to keep working through it. For whatever reason, this is the path they need to do. I wanted to rip the Band-Aid off. Let's not fund the government method. We are taking the long way around. A detour is what it is. Let's keep going. This is a story we talked about a little bit on Saturday, and I think this is a pretty big story, especially with Kash Patel at the FBI and now Bongino there, which we'll get to that later on. This is a pretty big story. Biden White House turned over Trump and Pence's phones to FBI without a warrant. The Biden White House handed over government-issued cell phones belonging to President Trump and former Vice President Mike Pence to the FBI in May of 2022 as part of a bureau probe into the 2020 election, linking Trump to the investigation without sufficient justification. While the FBI did not require a warrant to physically obtain the devices, sources familiar with the matter told Fox News that agents later began drafting a search warrant to extract data from the phones. So they got the phones first, and then they started working on a search warrant to extract the data. Seems backwards. It's like the Biden administration. Here, guys, take the phones, figure out a reason we can use these to charge them. That's pretty much what happened. The Biden White House played right along with the FBI's gotcha scheme against Trump. Biden's Office of White House Counsel under Dana Remus and Jonathan Sue gave its blessing and accommodation for the FBI to physically obtain Trump and Pence's phones in early May of 2022. Weeks later, the FBI began drafting a search warrant to extract the phone's data. The devices were entered as evidence in the FBI's initial investigation into Trump's role in the 2020 election known as Arctic Frost. That probe, launched in April of 2022, was spearheaded by former agent Timothy Thibault, who whistleblowers say broke protocol to open the case. According to disclosures, Thibault was unauthorized to initiate criminal investigations, but did so anyway, prioritizing the case against Trump above all others. And the whistleblowers came forward to the Senate subcommittee in May of 2022 after they took possession of the phone. The devices were not processed until agents obtained the search warrants. Still doesn't matter. Again, this is just going to be very, very interesting. They were doing everything they could to go after Trump and the Trump admin for whatever reason. As we've been saying, I believe the only reason they did any of it, they just wanted as many. It's like death by a thousand cuts. They didn't care if any of these things stuck. They were hoping to just delegitimize him enough, and then with the RNC establishment, Ron DeSantis op on the flip side of it, they thought maybe they could draw support away from Trump with all these criminal cases going on circling him, and DeSantis would win the nomination. Then they didn't have to worry about it anymore. If none of it stuck, doesn't matter. Didn't work. It ended up playing out. None of it stuck. They all look like fools. And some of them are probably going to go to jail over it. I hope they do. I do believe this current Trump administration, the DOJ, Kash Patel, all these people, they're not going to let this go without some form of justice. But we'll see what happens. And this kind of leads into, I guess it doesn't really lead. We'll get to the AutoPen story a little bit because there's been some more updates on the AutoPen story. A couple things from the White House website from over the weekend, or at least since our last show. We got this, continuing the reduction of the federal bureaucracy. This order continues the reduction in the elements of the federal bureaucracy that the president has determined are unnecessary. It goes here, the non-statutory components and functions of the following governmental entities shall be eliminated to the maximum extent consistent with applicable law, and such entities shall reduce the performance of their statutory functions and associated personnel to the minimum presence and function required by law. Then it lists the agencies that they're talking about. Remember, we have like over 400 of these random agencies, executive branch agencies. I would wager 99% of them you could probably deem as non-statutory, unconstitutional, whatever. But these are the ones he listed with this order. This is the second or third time he's done an order like this. So I always find them interesting. The Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service, no idea what that means or even does. The United States Agency for Global Media. And this one is notable because Carrie Lake is the one that I believe is heading up this agency. She's either CEO or president or whatever director. Trump assigned her to that agency. The Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars in the Smithsonian Institution. Okay. The Institute of Museum and Library Services. The United States Interagency Council on Homelessness. Yeah, they've been doing a bang-up job. The Community Development Financial Institutions Fund. Sounds like a money laundering front. And the Minority Business Development Agency. So there you go. Every one of those agencies are going to get rid of their non-statutory components and functions, whatever the heck that even means. And we'll see what happens. But I think this is pretty strong signal that these are just going to not exist in the near future. So something to keep your eye on. I thought this one was hilarious. I'm not even going to like necessarily read through the whole thing because it's just talking crap about this Paul Weiss guy. But just imagine you're Paul Weiss and it's like you have an executive order named after you addressing the risks from Paul Weiss. It's just, I found this so funny when I saw this over the weekend. But this guy, he, oh gosh, what agency did he work for again? Government sponsorship. It was Paul Weiss, Rifkind, Wharton, and Garrison, LLP. He was a partner and former leading prosecutor in the Office of Special Counsel Robert Mueller, brought a pro bono suit against individuals alleged to have participated in the events that occurred at or near the United States Capitol on January 6th in 2021 on behalf of the District of Columbia Attorney General. Trump is like going after, with executive orders, people who politically persecuted him and were involved in all sorts of shenanigans going back to his first term, before his first term, the Russiagate stuff and everything. It's interesting because when I look at this, like a president going after somebody you could call like a political opponent, I don't know how I feel about that, but with this stuff, it's a little different. And I know this is almost like me being a hypocrite. I totally get it. Totally cool with it too. Don't really care because I want to see these things exposed and accountability for these people. And how do you do that? So now he does this executive order, basically calls out Paul Weiss, tells everybody to watch out for the risks, addressing the risk from Paul Weiss. Does this mean he's going to sue back and be like, no, none of that's true? And then you have this court battle and expose what actually happened. I don't know. I don't know how this plays out. I don't know what the end game is, but I like it, even though I don't know if I like it forever. I hope that makes sense because I'm not even sure it makes sense to me. But anyway, We'll keep going here. Additional rescissions of harmful executive orders and actions. I love when Trump does these too, because it gives good insight to just his mindset. Like some of the stuff that Biden did. He did this initially, I think on day one. There's like 70 some executive orders he went through and just rescinded. And here's more of them. I went through, there's nothing nothing like stood out to me. Some of it was COVID response stuff. Some of it was delegation of authority. Some of it was economic stuff. I've been kind of waiting to see if there's anything having to do with Executive Order 13961, but haven't seen it yet. But yeah, he did quite a few of them. How many letters is up to R? I don't even know how many that is. I'm not going to count. It's got to be like 18 or something. Somebody can fact check me. And this is the biggie from over the weekend, and we're going to talk a little bit about this, even though we did Saturday. But this is a big one. Invocation of the Alien Enemies Act regarding the invasion of the United States by Tren de Aragua. Again, if you want a more detailed analysis on this, I would encourage you to go watch Saturday's Devolution Power Hour. Me and Chris talked about it at length, because there's a lot of interesting elements to this. No matter how you look at this is a very interesting topic, and something we've been kind of, Trump himself has been foreshadowing the invocation of this since 2023. We've been talking about it since 2023. This is a wartime authority, guys. He set the table very early on in his administration, like day one, about the, guarding Americans from invasion, and then designating these people as foreign terrorist organizations. It was a step-by-step process. First invasion, then foreign terrorist organizations, and now we have them declared as like, we're at war, we're being invaded. It's my job to prevent that. But what's so interesting about this is it was rumored last week. I think we may have even talked about it on one of the shows last week. And so the left, the enemy, like whatever you want to call them, the establishment, they knew this was coming. And so as soon as it was signed, there was already like a lawsuit in the hopper to prevent them from doing anything. But the Trump administration knew that this was coming and that they would have something ready. And so there's like this mad scramble. Allegedly, there's a story out there. I'm not even going to read through that one, but like, the timeline of the day that sent all these Venezuelans sent all the Tren de Araguans to El Salvador, because right now they have 2 plane loads of our prisoners, and we'll read about that here. Let's start with this story from CNN. Trump may have violated judge's order to halt deportations using a wartime authority, legal analyst says. Sure, this legal analyst is very smart. President Donald Trump and his administration may have violated a Saturday court ruling that halted deportations ordered under the 1798 Alien Enemies Act, CNN senior legal analyst Eli Honig said, or Eli, I don't know what that name is, but anyway, hundreds of mostly Venezuelan alleged gang members were removed from the U.S. to a prison in El Salvador over the weekend, and 137 of them were deported under the Wartime Act, according to an official. So it doesn't say how many total, just says hundreds, and 137 of them were. And that's notable too, because they had these people there, right? They had them in custody, and they knew they were going to deport them based on this authority, but they were just waiting for it to sign. So it's almost like they rounded them up, knowing that later they're going to invoke the Alien Enemies Act to deport them. That's interesting. Honig said that to determine whether the Trump administration defied orders depends on a number of factors, including where the planes carrying the migrants were when the U.S. District Judge James Boasberg issued the temporary block. This guy's clearly not a very smart legal analyst, because he's trying to find like minute details of where a plane was versus what's the actual legal argument for a president being able to declare that we're being invaded and allowed to deport those people. That's the legal argument, not where the planes were in the sky. What an idiot. At the moment the judge gave the order, he said in court on Saturday afternoon, I want you to not fly anyone out of here, or if the flights are already in the air, I want you to turn them around. At that very moment, where were the airplanes? If they were on the ground in the United States, then yes, there was a defiance of the order, Honig explained. If they had already landed in El Salvador, then no, there was no defiance of the order. It was already too late. Honig added that the murkier part is if the plane was already in the air, if they were mid-flight. I just kind of read that. Honig also noted that it doesn't matter when the written opinion of the judge came out. The ruling is in effect the moment the judge says it in court. Unless it's an unconstitutional ruling. Gosh, I'm not going to swear. I'm going to do my best not to swear this week. And I almost just did, but I caught myself. But I would love to call this guy, this legal analyst, some names. Legal analyst, more like it. We got this too. Groups asking the judge overseeing Alien Enemies Act case to immediately demand answers from U.S. over deportations. Attorneys from the ACLU, sorry, one second, and Democracy Forward want the federal judge overseeing the Alien Enemies Act case to immediately ask for answers from the Trump administration about deportations that occurred Saturday after he had ordered them to stop. In a filing submitted overnight, they say media reports, public data, and DOJ's own filing on Sunday suggests that defendants may have violated the court's orders. They're asking Judge James Boasberg to immediately order DOJ to submit one or more sworn declarations from individuals with direct knowledge of the facts, clarifying the following. And hold for process. I want to get a video up to play after this. I think it's this one. Yep, that's the one. Okay. Give me 1 second to come back to this. Okay. This is what they want. Whether any flight with individuals subject to the proclamation took off after either the court's written or oral orders were issued, whether any flight with individuals subject to the proclamation landed after either the court's written or oral orders were issued, whether any flight with individuals subject to the proclamation was still in the air after either the court's written or oral orders were issued, and whether custody of any individuals subject to the proclamation was transferred to a foreign country after either the court's written or oral orders were issued. I'm sure all those things are true. Well, maybe not like whether it took off, but it sounds like, the flights were in the air or whatever. They had a decision to make. They could turn them around, but they said no. And I'm glad they didn't. We talked about this Saturday too. We're going to get back to we're going to have to review the Marbury versus Madison judicial review. This is just insane what these judges are doing, but this is totally within Trump's authority. It's a good civics lesson. I'm here for it. And we're paying El Salvador like $6 million to take these prisoners. That's actually kind of a steal. I'm pretty sure. I guess I don't know the exact details of how long they're going to be there or whatever, but it sounds like it's supposed to save us money and it's good for El Salvador. Hey, I don't know. Oh, and thank you, Toker Joe, in the chat for saying what I wanted to say, but did not. We got this from Tom Homan. This is the video I wanted to play, you guys. Take a listen.
What would you say to critics who claim that this administration is refusing to comply with that judge?
Well, actually, we did comply with his written order on the 5 aliens that he didn't want deported, and we complied with that. But look, I agree with Carolyn Levy. I don't think he had authority to have a plane of terrorists turn around in the middle of international waters and bring terrorists back into this country. That's what this country is about. President Trump has promised American people he's going to drive down illegal immigration crime in this country. That's what we're doing, especially when it comes to TDA. They're terrorists. They've been designated terrorists. And I can sit here for the next hour and talk about all the young women that raped and murdered by TDA. Their robberies committed by TDA. They are an enemy of this country, and we removed them for the Alien Enemies Act, which is exactly what the president did, is exactly the right thing to do.
What would
I love Tom Homan. He gives no F's about anything. He just says it like it is to everybody at all times. I love when he goes, oh, God, we should try to get him on here. I'd love to ask him some questions. He's just so funny. But yeah, I think there's no issue with this. Okay, here it says here there's 261 criminal migrants. 137 of them were based under the Alien Enemies Act. So this saga is not done. I think this is going to be one that pretty quickly gets up to the Supreme Court. I can't imagine they're going to say that president does not have the authority to deport people that have not only been declared terrorists, not even here legally, not legal American citizens. Like, do you understand the argument that's taking place here? The left and this judge and all these groups and the mainstream media, they're basically arguing that like on behalf of the illegal aliens, these terrorists, a cartel. Like, no, they shouldn't be deported. They should be allowed to stay here. And maybe they're trying to frame the argument as, well, it's just not in the president's authority. It's not a good look either way. Anyway, I don't know how much I'm going to spend on this story, how much time. I just want to comment on it briefly. There's been allegedly a whole lot of swattings going on of conservative influencers. Okay. It's not that I don't believe it's happening, because I know this stuff does happen. But there's a video a while ago of a guy who like faked his own swatting at his own studio. And ever since then, I've been real skeptical of these taking place. I know it happens. I do. And I'm sure some of these are real. The amount that we're seeing here and the very little amount of actual proof that these are happening, I am curious how many of these are real. And I know not everybody likes when you ask questions about these influencers, but it's a lot of like conning people that I didn't trust in the first place. And then all you see is like, oh, I just got swatted. I mean, is there not video evidence of all this stuff? I've seen a couple people that have shown evidence, and those if you're going to show me evidence, I'll believe you. But with this stuff, I mean, so many people use stories like this just to get the attention. And I know that's terrible of me to say, but it's true. It happens. I'm skeptical that we're getting as many of these as we are. But the good news is that Kash Patel, he commented on this. He had a Twitter post. He's aware of the swattings to the extent that they're real and whatnot. And they're going to be looking into it. So we should find out one way or the other. And if they are real, which some of them are, I know, they're going to be punished. Like this should be, you're trying to, it's attempted murder in a sense. Like you're trying to get people killed. You're sending a SWAT team in, guns loaded, guns ablazing, going in there ready to shoot somebody who they think is a threat. This is an attempt to kill people, and it's unacceptable. It should be considered attempted murder, just my opinion. Or maybe there's got to be a new process to like, you can't call in a swatting thing unless you give your social security number and it's verified, or so. I don't know. But random people should not be able to call the police and say there's a threat at a certain place without giving any information, and the police just go and do their thing. I don't know. The Diligent in our chat says, bro, me and DeSantis just got swatted together. See, I believe you. You said it. I believe you. We got more here from the peace talk situation. This week should be an interesting week because Trump is speaking with Putin tomorrow, allegedly. Negotiators working to end the Russia-Ukraine war have already discussed dividing up certain assets. That's interesting. Something we've kind of figured is taking place a couple of years ago. U.S. President Donald Trump said Sunday as he announced he planned to speak to Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin on Tuesday. Trump's comments come after he announced last week that Ukraine had accepted a U.S. proposed 30-day ceasefire, putting the ball in Russia's court as to whether it would accept his proposal to swiftly end the war. We saw comments from Putin a little bit over the weekend. Nothing's really changed. He still wants them to not be part of NATO. He's not going to give them their land back. And the dude's been rock solid on that from the beginning. So any attempt to try to not have that be the case by Ukraine and Europe doesn't matter. There's even rumors I saw. I don't have the story pulled up, but I saw this on Telegram or Twitter that in light of, the ongoing discussions here, negotiations, they're talking conscription for, I think, Europeans, Britain, maybe. I don't remember which country exactly, but they're talking about conscripting people into the military to go and be peacekeepers in this area. That's not going to go well. That's not going to go well for anybody. But yeah, we got the meeting tomorrow. President Trump announced he's speaking with them tomorrow with potential territorial concessions by Kyiv and control of the Zaporizhzhia, whatever that word is, nuclear power plant, expected to be key topics. Trump's confirmation of the planned conversation came just hours after U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, said on CNN's State of the Union that the discussion was expected to take place this week. Witkoff described his recent meeting with Putin in Moscow as positive and solution-based, coming just days after American and Ukrainian officials agreed to a potential ceasefire with Russia. And along with this story, another thing we talked about on Saturday, just want to note, Keith Kellogg, originally back in November, was named as the special envoy to Ukraine and Russia. And it came out last week that Russia was not a big fan of Keith Kellogg for whatever reason. There wasn't much details. But then they had this big social media blitz on Friday or Saturday where Trump, it's almost like he's in a new position. I'm pleased to inform you that General Keith Kellogg has been appointed special envoy to Ukraine. And he goes on and on and on. But this is kind of a demotion. So now he's just the special envoy to Ukraine. no longer has Russia as part of the title. I'm really curious to know what actually happened with that, but it is what it is. All right, let's get to the AutoPen story a little bit, because there's been some updates. For those who aren't aware, we talked about this last week, Wednesday on the Power Hour. We talked about it on this show. We talked about Saturday. It's just kind of an evolving story. It came out that a lot of the things Biden signed was actually signed by an AutoPen. So it's just a digital signature that they applied to it. Biden didn't actually sign some of these executive orders. We don't even know how many. But I'm sure by the time we get to the end of it, it's going to be very, very few. But the reason this is important is because this is being used to delegitimize the things Biden did while in office. The main point and takeaway from Saturday's show, if you haven't watched it, is all the things Biden did in office are illegitimate because he didn't actually win the 2020 election. The signature thing is good. Yeah, this can be a gateway drug to delegitimizing Biden more broadly. Like, oh, you didn't even sign the stuff. What the heck? But I don't want to stop right there. My worry is we stop there and be like, okay, well, Biden's illegitimate, or the stuff he did was illegitimate. And that's the story to explain these last 4 years, when no, the actual story to explain it was the election fraud stuff. But we don't need to get too in depth on that. But Trump had comments over the weekend on video, and then he had this Truth Social post. Was this morning? This is last night. The pardons that Sleepy Joe Biden gave to the Unselect Committee of Political Thugs and many others are hereby declared void, vacant, and of no further force or effect because of the fact that they were done by AutoPen. So again, this is the President of the United States. It has been argued in court in Trump's first administration that when Trump posts stuff like this, it carries the full weight of law as a president. Like, this is a presidential thing. Him saying this, it's not insignificant. This is a big deal. In other words, Joe Biden did not sign them, but more importantly, he did not know anything about them. The necessary pardoning documents were not explained to or approved by Biden. He knew nothing about them, and the people that did may have committed a crime. Therefore, those on the Unselect Committee who destroyed and deleted all evidence and obtained during their 2-year witch hunt of me and many other innocent people should fully understand that they are subject to investigation at the highest level. The fact is, they were probably responsible for the Democrats that were signed on their behalf without the knowledge or consent of the worst president in the history of our country, crooked Joe Biden. So there's a couple things I want to talk about with this. Number one, let me see if I have this story next. Actually, no, let me play this video quick first.
It looked like we had an AutoPen for a president, and we would have been better off if we had, probably. But it looks to me like, that's a big subject. I'm sure you won't ask about that, but the whole subject of AutoPen, did he know what he was doing? Did he authorize it? Or is this somebody in an office, maybe a radical left lunatic, just signing whatever that person was? That's not what it's all about. I never use it. I mean, we may use it as an example to send some young person a letter. It's nice, we get thousands and thousands of letters, and letters of support for young people, for people that aren't feeling well, etc. But to sign pardons and all of the things that he signed with an AutoPen is disgraceful.
Okay, so two things I want to talk about when it comes to the AutoPen story. Number one is Robert Hur. If you remember, Robert Hur, special counsel, was investigating Joe Biden and his handling of classified documents. At the same time, there was a special counsel investigation going into Trump for the same stuff. And the reason they didn't bring charges was because Joe Biden was basically not there. He's like, didn't remember stuff, didn't know what he's doing. He was a well-meaning elderly old man, and they didn't think a jury would find him guilty of knowing what he was doing when he was committing these crimes. Okay. That's notable because that got pointed out and people freaked out over that. The left freaked out over that being in there. The Biden administration and the Biden DOJ freaked out about him including that in the report. I think that's notable. The second thing here is what Trump said in this Truth Social post about these people being liable for, right here. Therefore, those on the Unselect Committee, you are subject to investigation at the highest level. If you remember last week, we talked about this story. Speaker Mike Johnson and the Republicans are at odds over January 6th investigation. There's this weird debate going on how broad the scope of their J6 investigation should be. And I'll read just these two paragraphs here. Republicans are at a standstill over their investigation, relitigating the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol, with House Speaker Mike Johnson and Republicans leading the effort disagreeing on how to move forward. Johnson wants Republicans to stop investigating the former January 6th committee. That includes Liz Cheney and all those people, but Barry Loudermilk, who's been running a subcommittee on this same thing for a while, wants it to be very broad. A position backed by some officials at the White House. President Trump told Johnson before he took office that he wanted the investigation to be a priority. So it's weird that Johnson, if this is even true, it's CNN, I know. It's weird that Johnson is being like, no, let's not open it up broader and talk about the J6 committee. But if you look at this True Social post from Trump, he's like, those people on the committee are subject to investigation at the highest level. So will that resolve this debate over how broad the J6 investigation should be by Loudermilk? Maybe. Or does this mean there's going to be even a higher investigative authority, like the FBI or something, digging into this, the DOJ themselves? I don't know. But it's notable, something to keep your eye on. I'll certainly be keeping an eye on it. And this AutoPen story is not going away. I think they're setting the table for something even bigger. Hopefully, maybe a little Devo related. We'll see. Okay, let's keep going here. I got about 17 minutes. It's calm. DOJ lawyers urge Judge Cannon to block release of special counsel report on Trump documents case. The Justice Department attorneys are pushing U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon to keep special counsel Jack Smith's final report on President Trump's classified documents case sealed, arguing its release would violate the rights of two of Trump's former aides. The request came just hours after Trump publicly praised Cannon. "We had an amazing judge in Florida," he said Friday at DOJ headquarters. "Actually, she was brilliant. She moved quickly. She was the absolute model of what a judge should be. She was strong and tough." I wonder who they're arguing against. It doesn't really say. Because it's just interesting because, you had Biden's DOJ is the one who brought this case forward. And when Jack Smith, wrapped things up, and the Biden DOJ was arguing to release these two reports. There's one report which did get released, and there's a second report which they didn't because there's still ongoing criminal cases or cases against the two co-defendants or whatever. Well, those cases I'm pretty sure have been dismissed or pardoned or whatever. And now, who's arguing to push these cases out? It's not the DOJ. It was the DOJ previously, but now we have a new administration who's arguing to keep them sealed. So I'm just curious who's the other person involved, the other side arguing for this. I'll have to look it up. But I just thought of that now. So anyway, that's notable. Trump has been ordering military strikes against Houthis in Yemen. This is I don't know what to think about this. I mean, it's a good thing. I don't know much about the Middle East. We'll probably have to have Gordon on to discuss it a little bit. Also, if you didn't know, Gordon started a Friday geopolitical wrap-up show where he goes through all the major geopolitical stories of the week. That's 3 p.m. on Fridays, I think. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that later on. But President Trump has ordered the U.S. military to launch strikes against Houthi terrorists in Yemen, targeting their bases, leaders, and missile defenses. The decision follows what Trump described as an unrelenting campaign of piracy, violence, and terrorism against American and allied ships, aircraft, and drones. He criticized Joe Biden's handling of the Houthi threat, calling it pathetically weak, and arguing that Biden's inaction allowed the attacks to continue unchecked. So all this stuff is good. This is appropriate response. It should have been done before. I'm just curious the effect this will have on one, negotiations with Iran, because the Houthis are funded by Iran, right? And I know that Saudi Arabia has been, or maybe it was Russia, I can't remember which one. They probably both have said, hey, we'll mediate between the United States and Iran. Let's figure something out. And so is this a precursor to that? But this is a good response because the Houthis have been targeting our ships hundreds of times. They've shot missiles at us. We haven't really had a response when Biden was in office. Now we finally are. So I don't think it's a bad thing. Generally, I'm just curious how this is going to play into the negotiations moving forward. So notable. And here's a post from Trump on True Social. "Let nobody be fooled. The hundreds of attacks being made by Houthi, the sinister mobsters and thugs based in Yemen, who are hated by the Yemeni people, all emanate from and are created by Iran." So he's bombing this. He's claiming here he's essentially bombing Iran. "Any further attack or retaliation by the Houthis will be met with great force, and there's no guarantee that the force will stop there. Iran has played the innocent victim of rogue terrorists from which they've lost control, but they haven't lost control. They're dictating every move, giving them the weapons, supplying them with money and highly sophisticated military equipment, and even so-called intelligence. Every shot fired by the Houthis will be looked upon from this point forward as being a shot fired from the weapons and leadership of Iran, and Iran will be held responsible and suffer the consequences, and those consequences will be dire. Signed, Donald J. This is auto pen right here. Technically auto keyboard. I guess if you type your name, that probably counts. But this is what I'm saying. Like, how I think it's good generally that we're not letting these people get away with this stuff. But what effect is this going to have on those negotiations with Iran when he's right here saying, this is from this morning, like an hour and a half ago, 2 hours ago, that, yeah, all those attacks, I view that as coming from Iran directly. So it's just interesting. We got this. The Pentagon shut down a think tank tied to Russia collusion hoax. It's the Office of Net Assessment, the longtime defense think tank that notoriously funneled lucrative contracts to a key figure in the Russia collusion hoax. The Defense Department announced Thursday. It was established in 1973. I think it was Helper. Yeah, right here. The move has drawn criticism from some Democrats, including Jack Reed, though such objections have largely ignored ONA's role in funding Stephen Helper, a confidential FBI source central to the Trump-Russia probe. And that's notable. The DOD was funding an FBI source. Give me a break. But yeah, all this stuff is good. Let's see what else I got here before we wrap up. Oh, this is a funny one. A French socialist said that the United States should give back the Statue of Liberty. French MEP Raphael Glucksmann of the Socialists and Democrats group has set tongues wagging by suggesting that the Statue of Liberty, unveiled in New York in 1886 as a gift from the French people, should be sent back because the United States has chosen to side with tyrants. And this is what he said. He said, we're going to say to the Americans who have chosen to side with the tyrants, to the Americans who fired researchers for demanding scientific freedom, give us back the Statue of Liberty. We gave it to you as a gift, but apparently you despise it, so it will be just fine here at home. Come and take it. You want it back? Come get it. But he goes on to say, this is more interesting to me than even this. Like that part of the story is funny. But then he also went on, he said that France could benefit if Americans who lose their jobs in a wave of firings by the new Trump administration choose to emigrate. The second thing we're going to say to the Americans is, if you want to fire your best researchers, if you want to fire all the people who, through their freedom and their sense of innovation, their taste for doubt and research, have made your country the world's leading power, then we're going to welcome them. He's basically asking for our people to go there. And I don't know, like, I wonder, well, first of all, how many of our actual top researchers are being fired? I'm very skeptical that we're getting rid of the people that are just there for research, right? Like the apolitical people. We're getting rid of rogue, deep state, embedded establishment figures. You can have as many of those as you would like. I would gladly like to see them leave the country. We're not actually getting rid of, I don't think, our best researchers and best minds that we have. We got this. I'll keep going here because just got a few minutes left, 10 minutes. Bongino's first day is today. Last Friday was his last broadcast on his podcast. So you got to make sure you tell your friends that if they're looking for something to fill the void, they should come check out Badlands Media. I think would be a great landing spot for those who no longer watch Dan Bongino because he's not there. From his widely popular podcast to the #2 post at the FBI, Dan Bongino joins Kash Patel, President Trump's former election surrogate, to lead agency at Turning Point. And I'm just going to read these couple of things here. In closing minutes of his podcast, The Right-Wing Provocateur, Dan Bongino made a promise. Joining the FBI as its deputy director, he acknowledged would require a stark change in approach after years of making his name as a, I don't even know what that word is, pugilistic pundit. Basically, he says he's not going to be political while he's there. But I think you need to be to a degree. Like you're not necessarily being political if you're going after people who committed crimes and they just so happen to all be from one side of politics. It's not being political. But I'm interested to see what he does there, how he does there with Kash. I think it's going to be exciting times. Or it could just be one of those, he's a big name, gets put over there. If he doesn't do the job well, I anticipate he'll be back on the podcast for him, but I have no reason to think he won't succeed over there. This is some funny story from the New York Times. They kind of did the same thing about 2 weeks ago, but they're doing it again, talking about Doge cuts and how it's threatening our nuclear warhead stockpile. Firings and buyouts hit the top secret National Nuclear Security Administration amid a major effort to upgrade America's nuclear arsenal, critics say it shows the consequences of heedlessly cutting the federal workforce. They literally ran a story just like this 2 weeks ago. And now they're doing it again. And we don't even need to read through all this, but they're just talking about how many people they fired over there. And they were already reeling from Trump's first administration and trying to catch up. And they were so close to catching up to being like staffed again. Now Trump gets back in and fired way too many people. And there's no way they're going to be able to handle the workload anymore. And because of that, our 3,748 nuclear bombs, we're in jeopardy. We're not going to be able to respond to a nuclear attack or whatever. Like that's the dooming they're doing here, looking for any reason to delegitimize what Trump is doing and make it seem like it's a threat of some sort. Okay, a couple more stories here. I find this to be so funny. I love Minnesota. The state itself is beautiful. My brother lives there. The people there are great. A lot of election fraud. A lot of bad eggs there too. Not nearly as many as there are good eggs. A lot of good people. But this bill is hilarious. From the state legislature. A bill for an act relating to mental health, modifying the definition of mental illness, adding a definition for Trump derangement syndrome. And then in the bill, in the statute, mental illness means Trump derangement syndrome or an organic disorder of the brain or a clinically significant disorder of thought, mood, perception, orientation, memory, or behavior that is detailed in a diagnostic codes list published by the commissioner that seriously limits a person's capacity to function in primary aspects of daily living, such as personal relations, living arrangements, work, and recreation. The reason this is so funny is because it's kind of true, guys. If they're going to take transgender, like, what is it, gender dysphoria out of the mental illness disorder, like they need to replace it with something, might as well be Trump derangement syndrome. I think Congress should take this up, like our actual Congress, and make this a law. I'm here for it. So funny. And then with that, I think that's everything. Sweet. We got through it all. That's good news. Okay. Well, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up. I'd greatly appreciate it. I'm going to play the little outro video and then I'll come back and read the rants. I just wanted to note that GART tickets are on sale now for Plymouth. If you guys will want to join us in Massachusetts in May, I would encourage you to get your GART tickets. Badlandsmedia.tv/events. The prices are lower than normal. We worked some things out, so see if you can come. We'd love to have you. We're also looking for locations for next year, so make sure you bug Mrs. Bright as much as possible. I know she's in the chat. Bug her and hound her with emails. Send her as many emails as you can with suggestions, and one at a time. One email, one suggestion per email. Just trying to see if she's still in the chat listening, because I feel like I would have heard it by now. Anyway, I'll be back to read the rants. Hit the thumbs up. I'll see you tonight on Baseless Conspiracies. And yeah, share this with your friends and family. And we'll see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern.
Extra, extra, read all about it. 2, 3. Let's get started.
Oh, that's real good.
Why they stopping me?
All right. We got a couple rants, but first we actually have a boost here from CB, $17 from back on March 13th, which would have been Thursday. Says, loved watching Shipwreck on the show today. Maybe a future Badlands host someday. Maybe not. She's great though. She's right in line with what we do. Like her approach to news and information is right in line with us. She seems genuine. She's good. So hopefully at least we'll collaborate a little bit more in the future. We'll see what happens. But thank you for the super chat. We got two rants here one from 12 Indie Boy. Ty, nice to see you, man. Epstein files over JFK files. We will see much more of the justice phase for those actions. I want to see justice. Where is Cash and Pam now? So impatient. We are all impatient, but we're impatient because they're making us impatient by teasing this stuff. There would have been no difference in impatience-ness had they not done the Jesse Waters thing. Is impatience-ness a word? I don't know. But anyway, thank you for that. And then C Meadows for $1. If France wants the shrimp on treadmill and trans mice researchers, they can have them all. France can have the retards. America will keep the common sense researchers. There we go. I agree. Well, thank you everybody in the chat. Hit that thumbs up. I'm going to raid us over to Ychromes, who I think is still live. So I know not everybody likes the raid feature. I've been suggesting to Rumble that they need to make it, you have to opt into the raid. So maybe they'll change that. I don't know. But anyway, you guys have a great rest of your day. I will see you tonight on Baseless and tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, 1 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Daily Herald.